So what we usually do for anyone who's new on this meetup, I like to write a little something for each one. I just enjoy sort of sitting back and sort of being awareness and getting into a kind of a meditative state and then just seeing what comes out of my fingers. And then I usually read it. I know some people, some teachers like to sort of empty their minds and speak from the top of their heads. I like to write something ahead of time and read it. So I'm going to read a little something that I wrote to begin with, and then I'll lead you through some games and guided meditation, starting with a relaxation one. Hey Jimmy, how are you? Nice to see you. And hey Monica.
Hi, Brian.
So and at any time, please feel free to ask a question, either out loud. You can unmute yourself if you're on mute, or simply put something in the chat. Um, so and then we can have a conversation about that. Um, so first, I'll start with my little awareness essay.
Thank you.
You don't have to close your eyes, but you can if you want. Feel free, and but let's just take a nice easy deep breath and relax. We'll do a little more deeper relaxation later, but this is sort of by way of intro. So why awareness? Why awareness of awareness? Why is being aware of being aware so tricky for some people? Why do some people say that noticing awareness doesn't bring peace and joy? These are all great questions because awareness is tricky. We're actually not used to either noticing awareness or abiding as awareness, which is what I call simply being awareness. So it's tricky for a couple of reasons. But first, we'll talk about the why of awareness. Why I love to talk about awareness. The why of awareness is that awareness is our natural state. It's the substratum of all experience. And its nature is peace, happiness, and joy. It's there now. It's there always. It was always there, but it's covered up usually. It's covered up by our mind's desire to make something happen, or to prevent something from happening, or to change our experience in any way. And of course, it's tricky because if I said to you, all you need to do is drop every attempt to change anything about your experience, isn't that an attempt to do something to change our experience? So it's a paradox. So that's why it's tricky, but it can be done. Maybe in small doses. It's better just to start in small doses. When you ask yourself, just for now, could I not try to change anything about my experience whatsoever? Just for a few seconds. And when you ask yourself, just for now, can I notice the clear field in which all my experience appears? It's like turning your attention around to the background, like switching attention from the writing on a whiteboard to the white space. It's that pure, mirror-like, empty, clear, spacious field that notices everything. That's been here ever since you were a little kid. It's what we call I. Can you see if you can notice that just for a few seconds? And just for now, can you notice that the clear spaciousness is totally okay with whatever appears in it? Just like a mirror doesn't decide what to reflect, it simply reflects everything before it. Awareness is simply aware of whatever appears. It's totally okay with it. It's totally okay with whatever appears. That's why it's love, because it's unconditional. So we don't have to actively decide to be okay with our experience. All we have to do is notice what is already there and is already okay with all of our experience. And another way that it's tricky is because it's not a thing. It has no qualities of its own. It's what all qualities appear in. So we look for a thing when we look for it, and we don't find a thing. Looking for a thing is one of the best things to start to let go of in awareness practices. My favorite expression is, you can't see it, you can only be it. You can turn your attention around from the content to the context, from the foreground to the background, from the object to the subject. It's actually a double turnaround. You turn your attention from what you're looking at to what's looking, and then you turn around again and look out from there, being awareness itself. That is, knowing yourself as awareness. And everything you thought you knew as yourself, like your body, your mind, your personality, your profession, are simply objects that you, as awareness, are aware of. In other words, awareness is not your mind. Awareness is not in your mind. Awareness is not in your body, but your mind and your body are in awareness. Awareness is prior to your mind. Awareness is prior to your body. Awareness is prior to your learning words, language, concepts. Awareness is prior to anything that can be named, to anything that has a form, to anything that can be conceived of, because it's nameless, formless, conceptless, pure, infinite. And it is what you are, naturally, without effort. You are always aware, and you are always awareness. So when you do the double turnaround and you look out at the world from awareness, and get the sense that everything appears in awareness, but awareness itself has no limits. It has no limits because anything can appear in it, and everything does appear. And we think that awareness is limited to our own individual minds because we have this idea that we can't know what's in other people's minds. But we're confusing our minds with awareness. Yes, an individual mind can't know another individual mind. Well, at least not without being in a deep meditative psychic state. But when you imagine our individual minds as individual fingers on your hand, and let's say your thumb is touching your knee and your index finger is touching your chair. The thumb may not know what the index finger is feeling, but your hand might, or your mind might. And if you extend that metaphor all the way back from your fingers to your hand, to your arm, to your brain, and then back even further to the universal mind. So that we're just like individual fingers on a giant hand with billions of fingers, and a giant mind with billions of eyes. Then we get an idea of the limitlessness of awareness, our true nature. So to recap, the main things that are tricky about awareness. The first is that it gets veiled by our desire and our strategy to change our experience. And it's tricky to stop trying to change our experience without trying to change our experience. So you have to play around with it and almost accidentally find the sweet spot where you let go of all attempts to change anything. And the second tricky part of awareness is that we think we're looking for a thing, an object, something with qualities that we can see. But it's not a thing, and it has no qualities, and it's not even separate from things and qualities, because everything with qualities is made of awareness. So it's a paradox. We can't see it, we can only be it. So that's my intro. Feel free to, if you have any questions, unmute yourself or pop them in the chat. Hey, Matt, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you. And something is not a question, maybe a question, but so to look and to think it could be otherwise, it's the seeking that then it becomes, oh, if the otherwise, then I can rest.
Yeah.
While awareness says it is as it is because it's not as it's not.
Yes.
And has the immediate acceptance of that's it. Who talks? It could be different. Only the mind. And immediately, as it puts into the different, there is a scale and says, oh, but it could be better. And then the seeking happens. And then that now kind of my question, or I welcome your view of that. That becomes the self.
Yes.
That becomes self-serving, the movement of seeking. And thank you very much. It was a meditation.
I just love that. That's absolutely right, because, you know, I've often wondered, well, what is this self? I mean, so many teachers say it's an illusory self. So what is the illusory self? And it really is made of that those strategies that we do to change our experience, and that's all involved in past and future. And all the thoughts about past and future are virtual reality because they don't exist now. What's happening now is the only true reality.
Is the self a critique that becomes aware of itself and wants to be perpetuated, maybe?
Uh-huh.
That thing, a critique on anything that happens, a preferences over whatever happens.
Right.
And then that becomes the self of knowing that's good, the choosing, but not the conscience choosing, not the awareness choosing, but the needing. Oh, I need a better car. Oh, I need a better popularity rating or something.
Right.
Like, I'm wondering if the seeking and the needing is the self that thinks things could be better and then moves us to keep wanting more and seeking more.
Yeah, my response to that would be a big fat yes. I think that's exactly what it is. But you know, all that seeking and all that planning, it all sort of takes place in our brains, in our minds, and we feel like it's inside us, our bodies, and then we sort of attach to it. And we say, okay, we combine all that thinking, we combine this sense of our body, we combine the knowledge that we have a name, we do all that, and we sort of make up this persona, this thing, this self. And it's all in the mind. Because, you know, our bodies, we think that it's all in our body, or we think we are our bodies, but we have a body. Who has a body? It's like, okay, my hand. What do you mean my hand? Who's the I that has a hand? Okay, my body. Who's the I that has a body? And you don't even have to really understand it intellectually, because actually it's the act of asking those questions that turns you around and connects you to that sort of clear field that's the background. And it sort of creates a little wormhole between your individual mind and the universal mind. And the love and joy that is the nature of the universal mind can start flowing. So instead of a one-way street from your mind to pure awareness, there's a two-way flow. And the joy and love can start to permeate your individual mind and all of your experience and everything that you do. And that's why we do it, because it's not so that, at least for me, it's not so that I can understand the true nature of the world and be wise. It's so that I can be happy and have a good time in life and enjoy and live and love and not be depressed anymore, which was a big thing for me.
May I please share?
Yeah.
What I think, yes, what I think or what I sense and think also is happening here with the little baby, my little son. We teach him, or he knows how to objectify, and one day objectifies a self and starts living through that. But I'm wondering, maybe the objectifying was meant to be a function. And then at the end, that's why we look for an object, because we learn to look for object, not for background. Mm-hmm. And then looking for object, we look for the object self instead of the background self. And mm-hmm. the object self needs all these ideas, strategies, intrigue, and all this drama in order to be.
Yeah.
Because it has to be an elaborate object with an elaborate story and elaborate problems.
Yep. And it's actually natural for the human organism to do that, and even necessary to do that. the stage of its development. It's what keeps it alive, to understand, what's to have that sense of the body, and what's healthy, what's poison, what's safe, what's not safe is part of the function. So it's okay for that to develop, but when usually at a later age, we start to realize that manipulating our experience doesn't really bring the full peace and happiness that we think it will. And that's when we need to develop that ability, as you described, to sort of look at the background, look at the ground of being. But it's okay. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean you have to teach your kid, not to have an aim or whatever.
I hope to teach him until he realizes that by rearranging the circumstances in life doesn't bring the actual happiness.
Yeah.
Not to create too many suffering for himself and others.
Right. But
so many things happen on the way as people.
True.
Until they had it.
And they are going to happen, and they're going to happen to your kid. It's just, part of life. And they have to develop they have to know, they have to develop certain skills, how to feed themselves, how to safely cross the street and all that stuff. But it's a tool. The mind is a tool. It's not who you are, and it's totally useful and totally necessary. But the function of the mind is, well, it's the organ of separation. It's the thing that looks at the world and says, good, bad, safe, dangerous, food, poison. Its function is to make distinctions between things. And it's good at it, and you use it for that, but only use it when you need it. Don't be it. Don't let it be the master. It's a great servant, but a poor master. And because reality isn't separation. The separation doesn't, it's like the universe is energy rising and falling in temporary forms. And so there's really no, we think there's a separation between you and me and this desk in my hand, but it's sort of like the screen that we're all on. If you see a whole bunch of different squares or rectangles of different places, but if you were to run your finger along, along the Zoom screen, it would all feel the same. And then it's sort of like when you get a sense of that reality is like that awareness is one taste, it's one, everything is in awareness, everything is made up of awareness. And you don't have to believe it philosophically, you just have to you can almost even pretend, you can say, well, what if it were true? What if everything I see is simply made of awareness? And it's all one awareness, just looking like temporary forms. And you just play with it. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to create a dogma out of it. You don't have to convince anybody else it's true. You don't even have to convince yourself it's true, because the act of playing is what gives you that little turnaround. So let's move on to some of the games and stuff. Thank you so much, George. That was great. One of the things that I've noticed about self-inquiry and awareness practices and other things is that a few things are really, really helpful. One is to be physically relaxed so that you can allow things. And the second is that allowing things to be as they are. And the third is looking at awareness itself. So that's why I like to start with a little relaxation. I've mentioned this many, many times. I call it RAA or RA for relaxing, allowing, and awareing. Relaxing the clutching against the way things are, allowing things to be as they are, and awareing is kind of the verb form of turning around and looking at awareness itself. So just for a little brief relaxation, close your eyes if you want. This one's called Honey Sunshine. And take a couple of easy deep breaths. And feel free to customize this to your own imagination and what works to you, for you. But imagine a nice, warm, beautiful ball of golden honey sunshine above your head. And it's sort of coming down gently and easily and entering through the top of your head and filling the top of your head. And it's so warm and lovely and honey-like and delicious that everything it touches just automatically relaxes. And imagine it coming down and filling the space behind your eyes and cheeks and nose and in between your ears and behind your mouth and jaw, the back of your head and your neck. This warm golden honey sunshine just flowing down, and as it reaches your neck, it spreads out to both shoulders. And it fills you with relaxing, warm honey sunshine as it travels down through your upper torso and your upper arms and through your inner organs and covering them in relaxation. Your heart area, your lungs, your upper back, your upper arms, your elbows, your diaphragm, your belly, your lower back, your lower arms, down and down and down through your wrists and hands and fingers and into each hip, and your rear and your groin area and your thighs, this warm honey sunshine flowing down through your thighs into your knees and your calves and your shins, and just floating down to your ankles, your heels, and your soles of your feet and the top of your feet and each and every toe, filling it with warm golden honey sunshine. Now take a minute to just check and see if there's any spottedness, if there's any tension. And just send that warm honey sunshine to that spot. Just allow it to flow. It's almost as if it knows where it needs to go and it just finds wherever that tension is. So on your own, check and see if there's any last spot. And when you're ready, take another nice, easy, deep breath. And if you feel like it, you can open your eyes. When I talked about awareness and whether it has limits, reminded me of an exploration or a little game I call the Outer Limits. That kind of, it's just sort of an imagination game to sort of illustrate the limitlessness of awareness. So imagine this. You're sitting in the front seat of a car. You're stopped at an intersection, and you're looking down a long, straight street that extends for many blocks ahead of you. You might see buildings, trees, other cars, more traffic lights, pedestrians along the street ahead. Maybe the street ends at a river. You can see across the river into the distant landscape. The images of all those buildings, trees, cars, lights, of the distant river and the landscape beyond all appear in awareness. Now imagine a long truck crosses the intersection and stops right in front of you, between you and the continuation of the street ahead. Ask yourself, did awareness just shrink? Now that I can no longer see into the distance across the intersection? When the truck pulls away, does awareness expand again to include the street, buildings, lights, river, and landscape? Or is awareness limitless, borderless, infinite, able to include anything and everything that appears? This exploration came to me out of an internal argument I was having with myself. Actually, I was having an argument with Rupert Spira in my brain. And he would often ask, does awareness have any limits? And I found that my mind wanted to resist going where he was leading. I wanted to say, yes, it has limits. I would think it's limited by what I can take in through my senses. In other words, I can't see the other side of that wall, so therefore awareness is limited to what's on this side of the wall. So it took me a long time, because that was all sort of mind stuff ticking away. It took me a long time to come up with a satisfactory response for myself. But gradually, what happened was I came to see that awareness is infinitely malleable. It's infinitely expandable. It's able to contain anything and everything that the senses can send its way. So that metaphor was just my little attempt at giving a picture of sort of this new way of understanding. That it's like space in a room, and the space continues through the door and around down the hall and to the other side and out the building and into the world. And that space is one space. So awareness is kind of like that. Another thing that I find useful is some people find it tricky at first to look for awareness. And so sometimes it's good to just sort of practice a small little going back and forth, like going back and forth between subject and object. Like object, by object, I mean anything you can that has a name. My hand, my computer, my body, my thoughts, the world outside. Those are objects. Subject is what notices it all, the background, pure subjectivity, which is what awareness is. So this is a little game called subject-object swap, and I actually have 3 different variations on this because some words click for some people and not for other people. So I'm going to do it, it's a little experiment. I'm going to do the same little game 3 times using different words each time. So I hope you'll bear with me and see if it's helpful at all. So here's how to get a taste for pure subjectivity. Look at any object, a cup, your mouse on your computer, or any object. Let's say a cup. Notice that you're perceiving it. It's an object. You're the subject. So in this subject-object relationship, you're the subject and the cup is the object. Now look at your hand. Note that you're perceiving it. It's an object. You're the subject. So in this subject-object relationship, you're the subject, your hand is the object. Now think about an elephant. Note that you're having the thought. In this case, the thought of an elephant. In this case, the thought is the object, and you're the subject. So in this subject-object relationship, you're the subject, and the thought is the object. Now think about yourself. Note that you're having the thought. In this case, the thought of yourself is an object, and you're the subject. So in this subject-object relationship, you're the subject, and the thought of yourself is the object. What's the difference between you and the thought about you? That difference is a pointer to pure subjectivity. So you play and see if you can just sort of get a feel for it. Flip back and forth. Pick another thing. Can you flip back and forth? Okay, there's my my Amazon Echo sitting over there. The Echo is there, it's the subject. What's it appearing in? I mean, sorry, the Echo is the object. What's it appearing in? Awareness, pure subjectivity. Oh, I can feel my feet on the floor. That feeling is an object. What's it appearing in? Pure subjectivity. And you can do it with things, thoughts, feelings, images, ideas, concepts. And if subject-object doesn't work for you, you can try content and context. So again, you notice anything. Maybe you have a teacup on the table. Where is it? It's on the table. If so, okay, the cup is the content and the table is the context. So flip back and forth. Cup on the table. Cup is on the table. Cup is the content. Table's the context. Context. Now think about the cup. Notice your thought. Where is it? Where is the thought? In your mind? If so, the thought is the content and your mind is the context. See if you can flip back and forth between the content and the context. The thought and what notices the thought.
I think you are teaching us how to wake up. The shift of waking up from one state to the other. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
It's a meditation.
Yep. And you can do the same thing with foreground and background. Sometimes that works better for people. If you can notice that that my mouse is on the desk and the mouse is the foreground and the desk is the background. Or you can notice that the mouse is in the foreground and my mind is the background, or awareness is the background. You can flip back and forth. A thought might be the foreground. What does the thought appear in? That's the background. That voice in my head that's talking, that says, oh, you have something to do tomorrow. Who's it talking to? The voice is the foreground. Who it's talking to is the background. Be the background. And you can just play with flipping back and forth, foreground, background. Oh, there's a thought. Foreground. Who notices the thought? That's the background. Oh, I have a feeling I'm feeling a little anxious about tomorrow. Oh, that feeling is in the foreground. What's the background? The pure awareness that notices the feeling. So it's just a way to play around, because what I found is that this whole thing about, I call it the infinite well of joy and happiness. And because I used to be incredibly depressed and even hostile and reclusive and just, I was a mess. And when I discovered like self-inquiry and awareness practices and sort of stumbled upon this like well of joy, I realized I realized it was always there and I could dip into it whenever I wanted to, but I actually did kind of stumble upon it. So you have to play around it, hoping to fall in, because I know that might be a terrible metaphor, but you play with it and you're the expert. You just play. And look, we have it. We have a little kid. Oh, so cute, so beautiful.
I expose him from times to times to consciousness when consciousness speaks, and I hope I hope it's beneficial to him.
Oh, I hope so. And one of the one of the games that seems to be a favorite among a lot of people, I call it Born Yesterday, or sometimes I call it the Just Born identity. And basically you imagine you were just born. Everything is new. You haven't been given a name. You don't know the names of anything. You don't have any concepts for what you're experiencing. Everything is new and fresh. And you just play with that. Just imagine. Imagine you're just born and you look around. Everything is new. Nothing is defined, named. It's all concept free. One of the most important. Oh, before I go on, does anybody have questions or comments they'd like to make before? Yeah, Ashmeet might want to. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, like when you talk of sort of your being depressed and your journey, of course, awareness has been a big part of it. What I'm curious about is awareness is being in the now, essentially, and has also consciously working on your past traumas, your past stories that were, say, causing you to be depressed. Has that conscious work, say, more in the realm of therapy and healing, has that been part of your journey as well? And because the two things, like awareness with that, they're hard to, they seem contradictory, I don't know if that's the case for everyone, but to me they seem kind of paradoxical.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a great question, actually. And the answer is yes. Well, first, I started with therapy. And therapy was really, really helpful if you have a therapist who creates a safe space for you to have your emotions. Because in my own theory of depression, and this may not be true of other people who are depressed, but I think it is. I don't think depression is a separate emotion. I think depression is a strategy to prevent yourself from having the emotions you don't want to have. It's like a closing down. It's like saying, okay, I'm not going to feel. And then it affects your whole life. Your whole life gets tamped down. So that when you can have your emotions and you get used to being able to allow them to be there, then that's a big help. But I didn't find that in that regular psychotherapy went far enough because I still had this idea that there was something deeply flawed and deeply wrong with me that had to be fixed. And when I got into more non-dual spirituality and self-inquiry and awareness practices, which I began by trying to find out how do people change, the paradox was when I let go of trying to fix me, then I started becoming happier and less depressed. When I let go of the idea that there was something wrong with the personality that had to be fixed. So I'm neurotic. I have flaws. I'm just, I have bad habits. I have all of these things, but I just know that even when they arise, it's not really who I am. And I can drop into that field of awareness in which they appear, which is okay with my neurotic tendencies. It's okay with it. So, but the other thing is that I also had to do some deep dive work. And I found Adyashanti extremely helpful. I don't know if you all know the teacher Adyashanti. He's a wonderful spiritual teacher. And he had a product of audio tapes from Sounds True and of guided meditations. And one of them was called Dealing with Difficult Emotions. And one time I lost my job and I was kind of upset about that. And every day I would listen to this tape and it would bring you down through looking at emotions. And it would start with the story of the emotion. And that would sort of get the feeling of the emotion. But then he would tell you to let go of the story because the story is what sort of perpetuates it. But the direct experience in your body of the feeling, when you can stop clutching against that, it has a tendency, instead of entering and churning around forever, it enters, churns around a little, and goes out the other side because you're soft, you're porous. And when you start noticing that there is something within you that is okay with even the difficult emotions, and you start identifying with that, that's how you become more porous. And I went as deeply as I could with that into the deepest, what I call the core wound of, do my parents hate me? Which maybe I might have thought when I was 1 year old or 2 year old, which wasn't true, but I was a fear that they hated me and they would abandon me. And you go into that. But when you know that the real you is okay, even with as strong emotion as that, you can allow it to be there, you can cry, you can have tears, and it will come through and it will leave again. So yes, I think it's a great combination to practice self-inquiry or awareness practices or being the background and exploring your deepest darkest emotions and fears and allowing them. Does that answer your question? So that was what happened to me. and I just have to stress again, I ain't perfect in any way. You know, I have fears and I have bad habits, and I
Thank you for
just,
sharing.
you're welcome. I'm just a lot happier than I used to be anyway. So there's a kind of a guided meditation I sort of wanted to do, which is the identity shift. Because I think this is so key. And the subtitle is Be Awareness, because that's really what it's about. And it's about inquiring into your identity beyond your concepts of what you take to be yourself. It starts with the undefined identity of a newborn child, like we talked about before. And it expands on that exploration of who or what is noticing your experience. And I invite you to investigate the mystery of the self, the I, your true nature. So first, just get comfortable and take another easy deep breath and relax. And see if you can notice any clutching or tension that may have crept back in your body. And just let it be and breathe into it. And imagine you were born just a little while ago. Imagine you haven't learned any of the words or concepts or fears or ideas about yourself and the world that you've accumulated up to now. Imagine that none of the images about who you are and about what the world is like have formed yet. You know nothing of the world or of yourself. Imagine looking out through the eyes of a newborn child with no name yet, no self-definition, no concept of a separation between you and everything else. It all just is. Here I am. I am here. It's all appearing in me. My experience is me. I am my experience. Imagine that the eye that's looking out through these newborn eyes continues to look out as I grow and learn things. Each new thing I learn is appearing to the same eye, the same clear background of awareness that I am. When I hear a word or see an image, it appears in that clear background, in that clear background. But the background doesn't change with each new word or image. At 5 years old, it's the same clear background looking out through my eyes as when I was 1. At 10 years old, it's the same clear, spacious awareness that I call I that was looking out through my eyes when I was 5. 20, 30, 40. It's the same clear, spacious awareness that I call I that was looking out through my eyes when I was a little child. Now imagine you're the age you are right here, right now. Are you hearing sounds? Who's noticing those sounds? You might answer, I am. But who is this I? What is this me that notices? Are you noticing thoughts flowing through your mind? Who's noticing those thoughts? I am. Who is that I? What is this me that notices? Who is that voice in your head talking to? Are you noticing sensations in your body? Who's noticing who's noticing those sensations? I am. But who is this I? What is this me that notices? Do you have an image of your body? Who sees that image? Is it your body or something bigger? Who has a body? Do you have an idea of your personality? Who's aware of that idea? Is it your personality or something bigger that contains your personality? Who or what has a personality? So if I'm not my body or my thoughts or my personality, who or what am I? Remember the innocent, pure, clear awareness looking out of your eyes when you were just born. See if you can imagine, just for the duration of this little exploration, that who you are is that clear, empty, fresh, beautiful knowingness that includes your body, your thoughts, and your experience, but is bigger, more spacious than your body or your mind or your personality. Let go of all the concepts about yourself. Let go of all the images of yourself. Let go of all the borders or edges to yourself. That borderless, infinite field is the universe looking at itself through your eyes. And it's your true nature. You're not a concept because all concepts appear in you. You're not a self-definition because all self-definitions appear in you. You're not your body because your body appears in you. Be that in which everything appears. Be awareness itself. I awareness. I am. I. And now, whenever you're ready, you take another deep breath. If you feel like it, you can open your eyes once they're already open. We can take a look at George's beautiful baby. You know, I just thought of the third reason why awareness is tricky. Or I would say not just awareness practices, but the whole field of spirituality, enlightenment, awakening, the whole thing, is because I think, this is just from my experience, this may certainly not be true for everybody, but I think it could be. We have this idea that we are practicing something and getting good at something, which is true. You know, we can get better at noticing awareness, but it sort of tricks us into the idea that what's going to happen is this event in the future where we will be enlightened, where we will awaken, and it's going to be permanent, and we're going to be permanently ensconced in the ground of being, in our true nature forever, and we'll be ultimately happy, and it will never go away, and there's going to be a before and after with a point in between. And I do think that happens for some people. But in my experience, a much, much more useful metaphor is that it's something that we have that's part of us that we carry around with us like an infinitely refillable water bottle. And this water bottle is there. It's always there. It's totally reliable. Anytime we drink from it, it just fills itself up. Whenever we want it, we grab it, we take a drink, whenever we're thirsty. But it doesn't mean that we have to walk around 24/7 with a bottle in our mouth drinking. We can go through life. We can enjoy life. We can deal with life. We can focus down and make plans. We can decide we need to catch a plane and catch a train and go here and go there. We can take courses. We can learn to become singers or engineers and get good at something. We can have families, we can love, we can have sex, we can be involved in life. But when you know that that infinitely refillable water bottle of joy is just there whenever you want and whenever you need to drop into it and be the background, then you don't have to have this idea that you have to perfect yourself and attain some permanent state. So that's why it's tricky, because we think we have to think we have to become, these incredibly adept yogis who have achieved this amazingly difficult thing that only a few can do, when actually there's something that's just there. It's there, and it's just waiting to be noticed.
I wanted to speak to what you just said. I discovered your book at the beginning of the summer, Awareness Games, and I got it as an Audible. So I would listen to it as I would walk, and I'd be practicing the exercises, and it was amazing the feeling that I got, because I was really able to get absorbed in the moment. And it's something which, for a long, reading other books and trying to achieve that. And for some reason, your book, like the games provided like a wedge
Mm-hmm.
to get into it. And then after I read your book, like it was like Amazon recommended a book called The Magic of Awareness by this guy, Anam Thubten.
Yeah, good writer. I've read his stuff. I love him.
Yeah, and I did this, like I was walking and I listened to the chapters of this book. And what he was saying was just what you were saying, is that enlightenment is right in is it's totally accessible to everyone. You just have to get into that moment of awareness, and how that is nirvana, that is enlightenment. And you have, sometimes you go in this long path, and then you realize it's right there, but you needed to kind of go on that long path to get to that point where you realize it's right there.
Yeah, so true.
And so I try to, the like, I mean, I again listen to that book, The Magic of Awareness, and as I listen to it, I walk and I get into those moments, and I look at the trees, and everything becomes alive, and I try to also, like, I've been trying to practice meditation and get it through, like, just focusing on the sensation of air coming in and out of my nose, and by just trying to, like, really get into certain momentary sensations or experiences, I'm able to experience that awareness. And it feels, when I get to it, it feels like this euphoric kind of a state.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels wonderful, and everything, right? Like those other things, the daily life of things, are not kind of weighing me down at those moments. It's hard to kind of maintain that, but you know, um, but it's been good. And I wanted to thank you for that book. It was just such an amazing introduction to this idea, these concepts,
Well,
or
thank you.
or
Yeah.
not concepts, but this, you know.
Sure, I know exactly what you mean, and
Okay.
and no words are unallowed here. There's no
Okay.
there's no advita police here to say you can't use the words I or concepts or whatever. But thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
That is wonderful, and thank you also for telling everybody about the magic of awareness. I really do love that author, Anam Thubten. Is that his name again? I forget. Um, I would love to meet him someday. I think it's great. And yeah, that you know that bliss and joy and stuff that you talk about, I've noticed it too. I've seen it. I felt it. But the weird thing is that I also can feel angry, anxious, sad, and have repetitive thoughts. And the discovery that it was okay, that it's hard to describe, that Satchidananda, I call it, some people call that being consciousness bliss. I call it the joy of being awareness, or the ground of being the background. It's there even when you're anxious, even when you're sad, even when you're angry, even when there are thoughts running through your mind. So you don't have to like say, okay, this is not spiritual and this is spiritual. You can you can you can live life and have human emotions and enjoy the paradox of being happy when you're sad. It's hard to describe, but I think it's true. And it sounds like you experienced that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I've gone through similar situations as you did, like with depression and trying to go through therapy and you know, kind of getting hung up in the past. That so much of therapy is like digging into your past, but not about living in the present.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
And even in the summer, I was reading a book by a guy named David Burns called The Feel Good Book, which is CBT, cognitive behavior therapy.
Hmm.
And he talks about this idea when you feel something, to just kind of put it into perspective, right? This like identifying a feeling, and and by being able to kind of like acknowledge kind of where that how that feeling is working in you, how it's I forgot the term that he said, but the idea of it is the good thing about awareness is that it allows us to create perspective, right? In that wideness of things, the difficulties become not as overwhelming.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a game in the book called Include, 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 which is just that very thing. When you're having an emotion you don't like, you say, well, okay, there's the emotion. I'm having it. It's in awareness. What else is in awareness? Oh, my body sensations. I can feel my butt on the chair. Sounds, there's birds, traffic. That's in awareness. So you include as much as possible. And then that emotion, just in proportion to everything else that's in awareness, gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's a useful thing to sort of play around with.
I think you just described the reverse of losing perspective.
Yeah, that's right.
And Haran, this overwhelming is what leads me to seek enlightenment and to become lighter and playful. And I much prefer games of awareness than advanced course in awareness. It's already heavy. It has to be. It has to be the default state, joy and playfulness of games. It's a game. It's
Mm-hmm.
not life, so-called life and death. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Haran, for sharing.
Yeah. And that's a good point about playfulness. And one of the reasons is because I was not really very good at discipline. And so I actually tried a lot of practices that required, really long periods of time of sitting and meditating. And I actually like meditating. I think it's really fun, but for some reason, when I have to do it at a certain time for a certain amount of time, my mind rebels. I don't know why. It's just the way I am. And I despaired. I thought, oh my God, if I can't do this, how am I ever going to be happy and enlightened? And when I kind of gave that up, when I said, no, wait a minute, maybe there's another way that actually deals with just the way I am. Maybe I can just play and look for myself. Like when I was a little kid, I used to lie in bed imagining there was nothing. And I would say, well, what if there's nothing? And then I would get this creepy, weird feeling. And I loved that. It was kind of a fun feeling. So I'd try and get the feeling back again. Imagining, well, if there was nothing, I wouldn't be here to experience. And then that feeling. And so and that was just playing with my mind. And that was like like at 8 years old, the first awareness game. And then I realized we don't have to be superstar athletes with a taskmaster trainer who says we must do this. We can play and we can be our own experts. How's everybody else doing? Any other questions or concerns or confusions?
Uh,
Matt.
I definitely keep getting surprised by like what sensations aren't like medical and physical, but are like psychosomatic. I want to remind myself that that's the case because I continue to be totally surprised. It keeps surprising me, and I don't learn. So surprising what feeling like is not like a joint issue or a muscle pain, but is like thing that can be like majorly relieved by these exercises.
Yeah.
Just incredible. Yeah, surprising. Yeah.
So in other words, you have something that you think might be physical pain, and then you realize it's not really physical pain. It's sort of mental. Is that the way it is?
Yep. If it can go away with these exercises and so dramatically, then I would consider it psychosomatic.
Right.
Yep. And it totally feels like not psychosomatic, not just in my head or something.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sort of saying this for my own benefit. So just to sort of say it out loud and remind myself, because yeah, it always surprises me.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful.
So good.
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Always a pleasure.
May I feel I talk a lot. I hope it's not.
It's okay with me.
To respond to Matthew, sometimes when a drill bothers me a lot, and then somehow, let's say I accept it, it stops bothering me. I cannot entirely distinguish if it's there or if it has stopped bothering me and I don't notice it. So maybe it's something similar with the pain, some kind of, maybe not 100% cured, but a combination of not bothering you, not being painful in a sense. Maybe. Thank you for sharing and for listening to me.
I understand what you mean. I'm inclined to answer, but clearly I'm working on this myself. I've heard a teacher named Roger Castillo talk about biological preferences, and then what we're in control of is our attitude towards our biological preferences. But the biological preferences remain. Brian, I think, addressed that this evening, actually.
Yeah. I mean, there are bodies. Even though we may not be our bodies, it doesn't mean there aren't bodies, and they have biological preferences, and they're also emotional preferences. I mean, I like certain kinds of music and not other, and certain kind of foods and not others, and that's all stuff. That's all part of what is, but it's not the real me. But we don't have to deny all that. We don't have to pretend. We don't have to pretend to like something we don't like. I mean, we ought to try and do the right thing in the world, and do things which help alleviate suffering and bring happiness to people. And that's, I mean, we certainly don't, I certainly recommend that. But other than that, what your body and your personality does and likes is part of what is, and part of allowing and accepting what is allowing that, but noticing it's not the real you.
Thanks, George.
I was going to leave with a very, very short thing that I call it one thing going on. And this is really brief. And imagine that there's only one thing going on. It's just energy. It's just energy waving in different shapes and textures and colors. It's just one field of energy. Just like our Zoom screen is just one screen with a bunch of little temporary rectangles that look like people. And all these temporary shapes and forms are made of the same single energy field and are not separate from each other. So that means if one temporary form were to look at another temporary form, it'd be seeing itself, the one energy field. You know, like I mentioned before, two fingers rubbing together are part of the same hand. We conceptualize it as one finger feeling another, but it's the hand feeling itself. So if all is one and all is connected, and shape and form are simply temporary waves in the one ocean, then when I look at the world, aren't I seeing myself? When I look at others, aren't I seeing myself? So that's just something to play with. And again, one of my favorite things to say is you don't have to believe it. You don't have to believe, you have to believe that it's just one energy field. Because the act of imagining, well, what if it was just one energy field and this body and this computer and that book and that cup of tea and that electrical plug aren't separate things? What if they were all one thing, all just energy rising and falling in temporary forms like waves or like little eddies or whirlpools in a river stream that make a form and then dissolve back. So whether it's true or not doesn't matter, but when you play and imagine with the idea that it's true, it points your mind back. It makes that little turnaround, that little half step backward. That's what it's all about. How's everybody doing? So great to see you all. I really, I love seeing all these faces.
It's been wonderful, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. So great to see you. And I love your background of Central Park and one of my favorite buildings, the San Remo, I think it's called, in the background.
Yeah. Yep.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I'll put on Meetup and we'll do another one. I'm not sure when. I might be traveling. It might be later in December or it might be early January. I don't know. A few weeks or a month, we'll do another one. I'll put a link to this. I'll send out a link through Meetup if you want to see this again. It'll be on YouTube or on my website or whatever. And if you have any questions, you can message me through Meetup and or however you like. Thanks for coming. Thanks for playing awareness games.
I feel so much calmer, Brian.
Yes. I'm so glad. And thanks for your comments, everybody in the chat. I read them all. They were really lovely. See you all soon. Bye.
Thank you. And thank you. Bye.